Christine. I'm working here at the Spanish Fork Willows. I've been asked to teach a class on succulent propagation. Now there's quite a few different types of succulents out there. I had one of my coworkers ask me what a succulent was, and I gave him a nice, long, complicated answer about how succulents have a CAM metabolism instead of a C3 or C4 metabolism, meaning they use citric acid to store their energy, so during the night they can then release that energy, and instead of like a C3 or a C4 plant. He looks at me like I'm crazy. He says, the supervisor asked me to put this behind the succulents. What is a succulent? So I'll give you guys the nice simple answer. Succulents are plants with thick leaves on them. A lot of the popular ones are really small. This is a zebra succulent is what a lot of people call it. It's a different type of aloe. That's a Haworthia. These ones are actually one of the few that's really good in low light. You can see it's more of, they got this cone upward shape. We've got quite a few like that. Cactuses are also succulents. This one's got a bunch of flowers coming out on it, which is beautiful. Cactuses flower usually about once a year, but sometimes they can go a couple years without flowering. We've got more of the hen and chick shaped ones, and this one's also got a flower on it coming off, which is lovely. And then there's a lot of string of dolphins, string of pearls. This one's called fish hooks, so it's a string of fish hooks. There's different methods for propagating the different types of succulents out there. So we're gonna show you a few today. With something more aloe shaped, we've got this big one here. We're gonna end up splitting it. And then I've got a couple leaves over there that have broken off of more of these hen and chick ones, so we can start them from those. Another method of succulent propagation would be to get the seeds. You can see that they have flowers on them. Succulents do get seeds. They are incredibly difficult to start though, so if that's a project you wanna do, go for it, but it may be a year before you see any kind of success with that project. So I'm gonna come on over here. I've got this Lowe's greenhouse kit. We sell them here. And I'm just gonna pop out all of these little peat pods, and we're not gonna use them for this. We're gonna use some seed starting mix. Seed starting mix is a sterile compound. So it's usually really good for starting seeds or any kind of sterile project you want to do. It doesn't have any bugs in it. This is actually a dirt-free mixture, which is interesting because it looks like dirt. Actually soil-free, I guess is the real term. It's just got peat moss, cocoa coir, and vermiculite. Make sure that you thoroughly wet any mixtures you're going to use for any kind of seed starting or propagation, because soils tend to be or I guess this one's not a soil-based mix, but a lot of mixtures tend to be hydrophobic, so that the water doesn't soak into them really well. So I'm gonna get the soil soaking while we work with our little succulents over there. I'm gonna take my tray, fill it up about halfway full. I really like this seed starting mix. It's really good stuff. Like I said, even if you're worried about your houseplant having any kind of bugs in it, you can use this in houseplants because it doesn't have any soil in it or anything from the outdoors, so it's fully sterile. Add a little water to it and let it soak in. I'm not sure if you can see what I mean by a hydrophobic mixture, but you can see the water is not doing anything to it. It's just floating on top of the water. So we're gonna mix it in really good. Hopefully we can get that water to come in. Basically you have to do this anytime you buy a new soil bag for potted plants. Well, we've got a little bit going through it. I'm gonna add a little bit more water and wash off my hand and let it sit. All right, so here we've got some pretty sad looking succulents. When your succulents start looking like this, you can always just regrow from the leaves. A lot of times this is caused by overwatering, and then the roots start rotting, and then your leaves start falling off. So you'll just break off the leaves and let them sit for a couple days before you propagate them so that the ends can callus, is what it's called. Dry out and then get a hard shell. If you try and propagate them before you let them sit for a week, they will get rot at the end. Just it'll come right in that wet spot instead of them actually growing. Now these ones I've had here have already been sitting for about a week. So we can grow them and get them propagating. If we can get our soil to cooperate. It's still very soupy soil, so I'm gonna stir the soil for a minute. The soil is hydrophobic simply just because it's so dry. Plants do that a lot, especially if you don't water your plant for long enough. If people see this a lot in potted plants where it peels away from the sides of the pot, and then when you go to water it, the water just drains straight through your soil. So you have to either mist it or just water it for about 10 minutes, or you can get a plate to sit under it and then the water will come back in. But we see that in the garden center a lot, where the plants are just so dry that you can't really get the water to sink into them at all. Well, I may have overdid it with the water. I'm gonna add a little bit more soil to this mud. And if you want to, you can do this maybe like the day before and just let it sit in that soup consistency. And then it'll soak in itself. So you don't have to sit there and mix the soil. But if you're starting seeds, it is always very important to make sure, or succulents, it's always very important to make sure that your soil is thoroughly wet, or else they're just gonna hit a dry spot and then they're not going to grow any roots. All right, that looks about right for me. I don't know if this leaf is gonna make it, but we're gonna try. Pop the end of the leaf under the soil. And these are all the different varieties, basically, that we carry at Lowe's, or the hen and chicks. I just moved the plants around today, and this is everything that fell off. So we're just gonna try all of them and see who makes it. These are pieces that fell off that have already calloused over. So you can do a stem cutting as well and just pop the whole thing into the soil. This one, same thing, it broke off of a much larger plant. So we're gonna put that one in there. This one here. And I always like to put the greenhouse lid back on to keep it nice and moist in your propagation chamber. You can do this in something without a lid as well. You just have to water it a lot more often. This way you can usually leave it sitting for at least a week until you need to do anything else to it. And in approximately 2 or 3 weeks or a month, they'll start doing this, where they've got the little tiny baby coming out and then the roots coming out of the bottom. Since we put this in the nice wet soil, they'll have a lot more roots growing before little babies start popping up. But succulents are really easy to propagate in this method. I'm gonna put these two in wet soil so that they can grow a little bit faster. All right, and now we're gonna go on to propagating a string of something. So this one is a string of fish hooks. The string of dolphins and string of pearls, I think, are the most popular. So I couldn't find any on the shelves today. But we have a string of fish hooks, and it's a very similar method. This string of fish hooks right now actually does have some aerial roots coming off of it, which is not normal for succulents to get aerial roots. They must have propagated this in a really, really moist, warm place. So I'm just gonna cut it right here. You can see it's already got a nice long root on that spot. And put it in here with the rest of our propagation. But if you don't have any roots on it, you can just take a piece of stem. I have heard mixed reviews on whether you can use a leaf on the string of ones to get them to grow. I know people can get roots from the single leaf, but not a lot of people have success in growing a whole new stem out of just a single leaf. So if well, I guess we'll try one today and see, but most likely this will just end up to be a tiny little stick like that and never grow anything else except for roots. Those are the ones we're going to propagate by cuttings. We are going to divide one of the more aloe looking ones and plant it in some new planters with some good medium. So you can see we've got 4 distinct plants in here, and I'm hoping that one of them is the child of the other one, so we can split them. These are called pups when they come off of the larger plant. You just take it in there and get in really good. If you break some of the roots, it'll be fine. It won't hurt your plants at all. You can try and do leaf cuttings from these more aloe plants, but since there's so much water inside of them, it's really hard for them to callus over, like we talked about with the other ones. And since they can't really form that callus, most of the time you get rot. Some people are very successful with the leaf cuttings, but I definitely prefer just taking a pup when they grow, because if you have a healthy plant, it should be shooting out pups almost all the time. All right, so that one wasn't connected to the other ones, but I think these two, yeah, these two are both pups of the big one. You can see that they are, I can feel that they're connected. Maybe when I get a little more off, I'll get to see that nice connection between the two plants. Right there. And you can just rip it apart, or you can use some scissors. I just ripped it apart. And that gives them a lot more room to grow. You saw how crowded those guys were together. So I'm going to add some more of my soil, soilless mixture, into this pot. And I'm going to put the biggest one back in the original pot, just to give it a little more space to grow. Now I'm even going to use some of its original soil. Some people don't like to use the original soil. If you're repotting or propagating because of pests, then don't use the original soil, because they will come with it. But that is a nice thing about succulents too. If you ever get any kind of pests, you can always just rip off all your leaves and start new plants. So we've got our lot less crowded plant there. I'll put these little guys in this little pot. Now here in Utah, we have a couple native succulents because we're a desert climate. But most of them aren't sold in the stores. But I'm going to show you a couple succulents that we do sell that you can plant outside. All of these ones that I did up until now are all strictly indoors here in Utah, because they are not cold tolerant enough for this. They're definitely drought tolerant enough, and a lot of people love to put them out during the summer in some kind of a basket. This is a hen and chick variety that will grow right here in Utah. It is native to Europe, but it's a cobweb hen and chick, and they're really fun and they spread really well. They're a great ground cover for somewhere that's really hot and dry. This is stone crop. People love stone crop in like rock gardens, and it's just a really happy, hardy plant here. And then my personal favorite is ice plants. This one doesn't have any flowers, but you've probably seen ice plant flowers before. There's a picture of them right here of the yellow ones. They're usually bright purple, but ice plant just is a great ground cover. That's a wonderful succulent here. Native to Utah, we have a lot of cactuses, like a puntia. It's a paddle cactus, and it grows around everywhere, and you can get edible fruit off of it. I hope you enjoyed the succulent propagation portion of our video.